Mr. Eric.
Hey.
Thank you for coming here and being in the podcast on our fourth episode of Adventure Culture. And do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. Hi, Eric Blondeel. We're speaking here in the Waterloo region. I did a couple startups here over the years. One was Combinator Health, which is still operating. It was a point-of-care allergy diagnostic, more or less like, the skin prick test they do in the doctor's office.
Yeah.
We were trying to provide some additional tools to allergists, and that company's still going. It's actually got its product as being considered before the FDA right now, so it's pretty exciting. And then second company was Samos. It was an idea that I had after moving on from Combinator. I had to go in and have surgery, and at the time I didn't have any insurance anymore. So I was gowned up. I was waiting on the gurney, and I realized that I, didn't have any kind of protection if anything went wrong. It kind of led me down a rabbit hole of could you buy some kind of insurance before surgery? That all led into creating Samos, which was a product to basically provide that protection for people. And it's still operating in town too. Now I'm working for the University of Waterloo in the startup incubator Velocity. Having a really good time working with new student-led startups like yours, Santiago, and happy to have a conversation about anything.
Perfect. So you mentioned both of your startups, but they're both in the medical industry or something related to medicine. How come you went that route? Background in... So you're part of your background?
Honestly, so I did do a PhD in biotech, and I was always pretty interested in healthcare focused applications. But I'll admit, after doing two companies in that space, I think if I could do it again, I think I would have tried to find something with a little bit less regulation. It's really nice if you're a startup, if you can have interactions with your customer, if you can, put something in front of them, see if they'll buy it, make adjustments to your product. And a lot of that's really difficult in both like medical devices as well as insurance. You kind of make the product and you have to be pretty clear about what you want the product to do. And then after you get it approved, you can put it in front of the customers and see how they'll respond to it. And unfortunately, once you get the feedback, and you go and you try to basically make adjustments to your product, it becomes very difficult. So in those industries, you can get kind of locked in to certain design choices. So it can be very challenging. Whereas, if you're doing some kind of software business, or even if you're just selling something that you're allowed to just sell outright, you can say, hey, do you want to buy this? And they'll either buy it or they won't. And if they do buy it, and they use it for a while and they're like, this is okay, but it'd be great if it did this, you could just add that feature and all of a sudden, you can iterate on your business. And that's a challenge to do when you're in a regulated space. So, yeah.
So with the medical devices and the insurance industry, it's very difficult to do market validation. Therefore, there's a lot of risk behind it.
There is challenge. So, it's tough because as a startup, you want to go fast, but in some ways, you really have to stop and reassess a lot of the assumptions that you're making about your business. Things like unit economics, things like, as well as, as a startup, you could be selling the vision for a very long time to investors because it can take a lot of time to reach market in the first place. So, for a very long time, you're basically operating on investor capital as opposed to revenue as a business. So that can be a challenge as well, where you're not really in business. You're basically a project. You are a project to hopefully get to market someday. Yeah.
Gotcha. So it's just people believing in your dream and try to go with it, give you more from it.
But at the same time, you get very good at that. It can be a challenge too, because to a certain extent, you are distributing Kool-Aid, and you drink some of it yourself because you want to believe in yourself and that future. But to a certain extent, if you can maintain realism in the back of your mind about a lot of this stuff, that can be pretty important. You don't want to completely lose your grasp of reality outside of the reality distortion that you might be perpetuating in order to keep your team inspired, to continue to keep investors excited, to any range of activities that you need to do.
Right. Yeah.
Without the validation of people just buying it and loving what you've built for them.
In those type of industries, you have to be your best cheerleader at the same time your best critic. Yeah?
Exactly.
It's pretty difficult to do. And how do you start your journey in entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I never thought I would be an entrepreneur. It wasn't something that interested me. I mainly just wanted to have I don't know what I wanted, honestly. I did an engineering degree, and then unfortunately I graduated during the financial crisis. So within a few months, all the jobs just disappeared. And I went from I was starting to get interested in working for a winery as a chemical engineer, or a cookie factory or a chocolate factory. I was getting very interested in food and food distribution and food manufacturing, to all of that disappeared, all those opportunities. Every business was in protection mode. And I was lucky though, I'm from Calgary, and I'd worked for a company out in Calgary. It's gone now. It's actually went into receivership, unfortunately. But it was an engineering consulting business, and they liked me a lot. And even though it was the financial crisis, I reached out, and they were willing to give me a job. And unfortunately, it just, I didn't want oil and gas to necessarily be my career path. It wasn't what I felt passionate about. It wasn't what I was particularly interested in. And then my roommate in university, he was an entrepreneur himself, and he was running a business. And it's funny to look back because we were talking about this a little bit before the show, that he went from being the biggest cheerleader of entrepreneurship and how, I should think about doing that and don't just go get a regular job. He works for Google now, and he loves his job. He loves the stability of it. He loves, he gets paid really well too. And he does not want to do another company. And that was after 10 years of trying to make his company work and just not getting it off the ground, unfortunately. It's just the case for a lot of entrepreneurs. But him and I did a road trip across North America after university, and in that time we just talked about startups the whole time, and I caught the bug. I really wanted to do it. And then I came back to university to do a PhD, decided I wanted to live in the future. I wanted to work in something I would be passionate about, and I decided that the future biotech was probably going to be important. And so that's what I started working in. I went from, designing pipelines to culturing Chinese hamster ovary cells, and working in, nuclear magnetic resonance imaging. So, it was interesting making that jump, but at the same time, in the back of my head, I knew I wanted to do a company. And it helped as well that there, unfortunately, were not a ton of biotech opportunities in Canada at the time. Still not really. And so, around 2014, so this was a couple years into grad school for me, I found Velocity, which is the main startup incubator program in the Waterloo region associated with University of Waterloo. And they had launched a program called Velocity Science, which still exists. It's basically they provide laboratory facilities, they provide consumables. Students that want to do a company that is science focused can go into their lab and build it. And I was one of the first companies that got in, along with John Dick actually was in there too, who runs Velocity on campus now as well as actually Krista, who runs Velocity Science, the program now. She was also in that first group of companies. She was with Medela Health. And now, we all kind of came back to the program to help the next generation of companies. But Velocity is a big program. It's not just for science companies. But anyway, we went through that program, started working on our product, which was, again, we were trying to, at the time, we were trying to make a skin patch for allergy testing, which just sounded very wild to say, because there are no skin patch diagnostics. Yeah, we wanted to build the future. And this is a few years before Theranos got big, before Theranos even collapsed. And so, diagnostics kind of became a thing, an important thing, in the time period that we were working on it. We also got into YCombinator, and that changed everything as well. We were broke before we got into YC, and I was a couple of days away from just quitting and moving on with my life and
Finding a job.
I don't know about a job. I was going to finish my PhD. But yeah, we got the interview. We flew down to Mountain View. We got in front of at the time it was Jeff Ralston and Tim as well. And we told them what we wanted to build. We showed them an early prototype of what we were doing, and they said, "What the hell? This looks cool." And we were in the program. All of a sudden, we had enough. Well, we had some money. We had no money before, not nearly as much as they give now, but it was enough to get some lab space near Stanford. And we brought the whole team down because we had some co-ops and a few other people. We brought everybody down, shoved us all into a 3-bedroom apartment in Palo Alto, which, this was 10 years ago, but it was $6,500 a month of rent. Yeah.
Wow. It was bad.
Yeah. $6,500 a month for a 3-bedroom apartment. And at the time I remember thinking, oh man, we're just blowing money being down here. But honestly, and it's funny because I was talking to my co-founder from Canada this morning, and we both talk about how, we love Waterloo, we love this ecosystem, but there is something pretty remarkable about the Bay Area ecosystem, and to a certain extent, we kind of wonder what would have happened to our trajectory if we had stayed down there and decided to build the company down there, as opposed to moving right back to Waterloo and building. The money went a lot further up here, which is important when you're a medical device. Making the dollar stretch until you can raise more money is very important. But yeah, honestly, being down in California was one of some of the best months of my life.
That because of the culture they got down there with startups and just how much money there is around, or what was so different about California?
The culture is good. Obviously the availability of capital is pretty good as well. You have this concentration of some of the most interesting, smartest people around. And then that's one of the best parts about the YC program, honestly, is, they would have these dinners once a week, and you would get together, just grab a plate of food, sit down by somebody random, and they would be doing something absolutely outrageous. And it was some of the most exciting stuff that I'd ever heard of, even trying to base a business around. And there's only 100 companies at the time. This was the summer 2016 batch at the time. But you build these really strong relationships with people because YC as a program they put you under an enormous amount of pressure, or I should say you put yourself under an enormous amount of pressure in order to, succeed within that program. And, for the first few weeks, people are like, oh, I'm crushing it. But that quickly fades and people start to let the walls down a little bit, and they start, talking about, oh no, I'm running into this problem and it's killing me. And oh no, I keep fighting with my co-founder all the time, and it's just like a lot of the humanity kind of bleeds through, and you form these very tight bonds on the basis of you're all kind of in the meat grinder together, and you're not really competing with each other because you're all doing very different things, and there's way more investors than there are you. So it's not like you're like
Fighting for the dime.
yeah, you're not fighting. You're definitely kind of helping each other. And I'm friends with a lot of those people to this day. When I went back to YC with my second company, I was able to get like 30 recommendations from just like people from my batch that were willing to basically say, yeah, give this guy another chance. So yeah, it's I highly recommend Y Combinator as a program to pretty much any startup founder, mostly on the basis of like anybody can raise, but it takes a lot of time. And when you are raising money, you're not building your company, so it can be a real waste of time, honestly. So the second time around when I went to YC, the main reason was, like I could have raised a seed round just on my own, but I would have had to do like 100 conversations to close like 20 checks.
Right.
Whereas I went to YC and I did like 40 conversations and I closed 20 checks. And that was, that was a better use of my time so that we could focus on the company, focus on building it, did 3 months quickly, wrap it up, and then go.
For sure.
So that would be a main reason. And frankly, YC as a program, I think is superior to any other one that's out there. So I'm an unapologetic YC maximalist, honestly. I think you should apply, So
Let's see about that. I mean,
you gotta keep working on your thing. But yeah.
Is there any specific tips to get into YC that you'd give to people trying to apply?
I mean, you gotta build something compelling. The big motto of YC is build something people want, which is pretty fundamental. It sounds simple, but
Difficult.
Yeah, a lot of people just build stuff that they want or that they think people want, and they don't know what people want. They haven't taken the time to really talk to their customers, to talk to their users, to find out what it is that they actually are, experiencing that they appreciate. So, yeah, for the application, I mean, one thing is it's got to be something good, which sounds so arbitrary, but yeah, you got to build something unique and interesting that is going to be compelling to communicate. The next thing is clarity. There's a lot of people that you tell them, hey, what are you working on? And they will tell you like a War and Peace novel this thick of whatever, it's just like going all over the place. Like
Simplifying it is...
Yeah, you need clarity. You need to be able to communicate what you're doing clearly, concisely, and in a compelling way for a range of activities, like not just to get into YC, but just to succeed as an entrepreneur. Like whether it's talking to investors, whether it's convincing people to come and work with you, whether it's talking to customers, communication is so important. And in a lot of ways, like even though the YC admissions process is pretty typical, like it's a written application and then it's an interview, like that's enough because either you can communicate what you're doing and what you're doing is worthwhile or it's not. And it could be pretty binary when you look at the teams that are applying.
Gotcha. So, and once you get in, they just give you money, or how does it? They just start throwing money at you? Or
No. There's actually a whole due diligence process, especially now. So, I mean, they offer you admission, but then you have to work with their diligence team to make sure that you are set up in such a way that you can actually receive the funds. And then it actually comes in 2 tranches now. There's the YC deal when you first get in, and then there's another one which is I believe it's still optional, but it's they offer a secondary investment on what's called an MFN safe, most favored nation safe, which means you accept the money on this deal, and then the next time you raise money from an investor, that those terms of the MFN take the same terms as your next investment.
I see.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. And what do they take? Because it seems so nice.
I mean, I'll let your listeners look that up. I don't think I can quote that, but I will say that it's worth it. You know, like a lot of people look at the terms and they say, "Oh, I don't know," or they look at the terms of some other accelerator program that's like slightly better, and they're like, "Oh, but I'm going to go with this one." But honestly, YC as a program, you get so much more out of that for what they take in the deal. You get so much out of that for the rest of your life that it's definitely worth it.
The connections you get out of them. And
there's the YC network. There is it's just it's difficult to describe honestly, but but it's significant.
Got it. And with all your journey and your different companies, what have you learned from being a founder? A lot. Or like, what are those specific, highlights?
Well, I mean, it's interesting how much of it is like a dichotomy. Like one thing is like you have to have a lot of perseverance. Like you have to be like tenaciously going after your thing. The people that I've seen succeed are the ones that just had no quit in them. They would go. But you also have to be flexible. Like if your thing is not right, you have to change it. You have to pivot. I've known a lot of founders that should have quit a lot earlier. And then by the time they quit, they were totally burned out. And now they'll probably never do another startup. Because doing a startup, it is you care a lot about it. It becomes a big part of your personal identity. It becomes a big part of your life. And you want it to succeed. But where was I going with this?
Perseverance.
Yeah. Like you don't know how to quit sometimes, but it's, they used to say, fail fast, back in the day. And even though that nobody likes that, to say it, it's still very true because like the sooner you realize that what you're doing is not going to lead to where you want to go to, the sooner you can change your path. And that might be, completely shutting down the business, returning what money you have and going and working on something else. Or it could be pivoting to something wildly different that you've realized that people will actually care about. And not enough people are willing to, like, they're very precious about their idea and their business. And like we were talking about before, you have to be you have to be the main cheerleader.
Right.
But you can't drink your own Kool-Aid too much. If you do and you lose rationality, you'll make bad business decisions. And, at a certain point, the chips are down and you have to say, this is not a functional business. Right. Or like, I don't have the creativity. I don't see an angle on how to make this thing a working business. But, I'm still, how old are you?
I'm 23.
Yeah, I'm still 23. I've got all kinds of time that I could. One thing that I remember was actually Ryan Denham, the CEO at Nicoya in town here. He gave a talk at Velocity one time, and he said that, like, as a founder, you'll start to notice business opportunities just like walking around, living your life. You'll see, oh, that could be interesting. And he said, just start writing them down. Have a sheet. And so I've actually got like a list on my phone of about business ideas. And it's good to collect those because you never know, the thing you might be working on, you might at some point be like, it's done. And then you go to the list and you're like, that was a really good business idea.
Yes.
I'm going to think about that now. And it's just an exercise because a lot of people, it could be hard to come up with a startup idea. Like nobody knows, a lot of people would like to do a startup, but they can't come up with the idea. But then when you start thinking about these, or even when you're doing a startup, you just start having so many options. And then you'll have a situation like I did when I went in for surgery, and it just clicks. It's just like, oh yeah, I think that's actually a pretty good opportunity.
Right. And then sometimes just you have that list of ideas, but sometimes not the right timing to getting them, or you don't have the amount of knowledge you need or the network.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like now, I mean, I have a lot of advantages that would let me do a startup, and I'd actually really love to do another startup, but you know, I have a family, and a little bit of stability is not a bad thing.
Right.
And
Risk.
yeah. I mean, I thought about doing another company, and my wife kind of sat me down, and she's like, I really need you to think about, you know, picking something with more stability. And that's understandable.
Yeah, I think we've talked about it in different episodes where we know that it's the time for us to like really risk it all because we don't have anything else other than student loans.
Yeah.
Which is still pretty bad, but you know, we can, I guess, kind of figure out. But once you get a little bit older, it's a bit harder for you to risk it all.
Or you know, like fake your death and just like
yeah, and then go and try everything. That's another way. If you were to do everything over again, what would you do differently?
Yeah, I mean, you know, apart from I don't know, like get into AI earlier or something like that. I mean, with the first company, one thing, and this is true, I would say for a lot of companies, is you will encounter people that will offer to do something for you that you don't necessarily want to do.
Mm.
So, like for instance, founder-led sales is so important. You have to do it yourself. You have to go and talk to your customers and figure them out. You need to know your customers better than anybody. So don't hire a salesperson until you have figured out sales yourself completely. But another one, but that's just an example. Oftentimes, you'll reach a point with a company, like if you've had even like some marginal success, where it sounds like a good idea to abdicate responsibility for something important to somebody that tells you that they're an expert. And if you're not, especially if it's an upper leadership position for your company, like you can't just hire for technical fit. You really have to hire for culture fit. And that includes basically, you know, having them screened for, you familiar with the idea of the dark triad?
No.
The dark triad is these tendencies of, like, if you test these people and they'll be high on the scale for psychopathy, narcissism, or Machiavellianism. Because, you know, like a lot of companies, they'll be make or break based on an early hire that, you know, they seem like they're okay, but they're actually like a nightmare person, and they make work a nightmare for everybody under them. They hire bad people, and all of a sudden you've got this like poison branch of the company that will completely undermine the foundation of your growth. Assuming that you survive, because, you know, they can get you out of the company as well.
They can kill a company.
Exactly, or at the very least hobble them so they never really see the success that they could. So yeah, I mean, people always say like be very careful about hiring, but I remember I spoke to this executive coach and I asked, like, you know, what should I have done in this situation to avoid this circumstance? And he said that, like, when you did your hiring process, you failed to do testing on the basis of these qualities, because they're available now. Like, they make these tests and it's very difficult for these people to answer the questions in such a way that doesn't reveal their tendencies. And so, yeah, especially if you're hiring some, like, your early executive team, yeah, be careful to not bring on these sort of like dark triad type individuals, because the way that the structure of how we empower people in our society, it tends to favor these types of people. So you'll have these experienced people that can tell you how to do this thing that you are feeling insecure about because you're a founder. And then on one hand, you abdicate responsibility for something important that you actually do need to learn how to do. On the other hand, you let a viper into your company that is going to poison the culture and probably, kill you and your company. And I've seen it in a lot of circumstances. So that would be something important to keep in mind.
Thank you. And well, I'm for sure gonna be very careful when I start hiring people.
Yeah, you got to be.
Yeah, as of right now, it's my brother and I, so I think I know him pretty well.
Like it's the old moniker, hire slowly, fire fast. And unfortunately, like especially if you get product market fit and you start growing really quickly, you tend to want to hire quickly, but it inevitably leads to problems. So,
Got it.
yeah.
So I'm gonna give the test to my brother. And what would be some type of advice you would give for somebody that is pursuing some type of career similar to yours, in entrepreneurship, maybe in something related in engineering as well?
Yeah, I mean, don't. I don't know. I've always felt. I mean, like I don't even wear my iron ring anymore, and I'm not a professional engineer by any stretch. But at the same time, I don't know what to tell people. Like to a certain extent, make something people want. Like if you want to do entrepreneurship, you don't need to be in engineering. You don't even need to be in whatever program. Like the nice thing about being in some of these programs is the people that you get to be working close to and be influenced by. If you surround yourself by remarkable people, you will do remarkable things. And that's something that I've always kind of kept in mind. To a certain extent, trying to follow my passions and what I think is cool, but also, yeah, like the more you surround yourself with remarkable people, the more likely it is you will do remarkable things.
Gotcha. So I'll for sure put that in my own life. I think I try to keep a good circle of people that are, constantly feeding on my same type of goals and mission, I guess. But yeah, it's for sure something that is extremely important to have in mind. And well, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for all the information you've given us. I think I've gotten a lot of useful things from you, especially in the Cornerstone class.
Great.
I tried to ask a lot because I know you have a lot of information.
Yeah. If you're a Waterloo student and you're thinking about entrepreneurship, apply for the Velocity Cornerstone program. They probably run a cohort every term, and you don't need much to get started. There's also other programs if you don't even feel like you have an idea. There's foundations. There's a Velocity program for every stage of a person wanting to work on this business, like all the way to the incubator itself, where there are companies that have raised millions of dollars that are based out of there working together to create a thriving environment for entrepreneurship. So
shout out Velocity.
Yeah.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you for being in the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Perfect.